had a lot of success with the high school, college level, professional levels of baseball, basketball, football, rugby, golf, soccer, track and field, and volleyball. I think that's kind of that we've been with. College teammates, a three-time national champion, seven-time All-American triple jump, cross Hall of Fame, and also we had all-time team selection. So Ajamu is going to come up and talk about speed development for distance runner, and I think that's very important for us to take it to the next level. Cross country, but also our athletes move on to hopefully track and field and other sports. So come on up, Moo. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, wherever. Okay, thank you. How do I get the, it's not showing. Yikes. Come on. Great, and when it doesn't, it stinks. That's not even, my mouse isn't even showing. There's no mice. Great. Oh, here we go. Yep. So, while we get things set up technologically, first of all, good morning.
Morning.
And thank you for staying. I know many of you want to get on the road. You have a long way to go, so I'm going to do my best to make the next hour worth your while. So I'll reintroduce myself, Ajamu Olaniyan. I am a sports performance engineer. What is a sports performance engineer? It is someone who helps athletes achieve their goals. So I've worked with speed skaters, figure skaters, volleyball athletes, but more specific to you all, for the past 2 years, I've been directly working with cross-country athletes.
First, can I interrupt just?
Yeah.
So he's got a Chromebook. I don't use Chromebooks a lot, and it's doing the dual screen thing and not working. Does anybody have Chromebook help expertise they can help me with? Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. We're just manifesting success here. I know you're going to get it. Oh, yeah, I see. So I've been working with Spencer Agnew of Fort Atkinson's cross-country and track program. Very, shoulder to shoulder, but in an in-depth level where we've done speed, cross-country speed-specific clinics for the past 2 years. We actually meet via Zoom, and we've planned out seasons. We're tracking data, and really having a lot of conversations about how speed impacts long distance athletes. So, maybe okay. I do want to, I also just want to thank the Cross Country Coaches Association. Oh, sweet. Nice job. Yeah. For the opportunity. So let's get into it. Doesn't matter if I can reach a higher VO2 max in 5 minutes when I have to cross the finish line in 102 seconds. So Dom and I, college teammates and really close friends, and we've been arguing, or not arguing, discussing vigorously the merits of speed development for cross-country athletes. So, and you know what, it's good for both of us. Speed matters. And so today I'm going to talk to you, first of all, about what science says about speed development. And then I'm going to talk to you about what the data says. And there are some Wisconsin athletes that will be highlighted in my presentation. Good? Thanks. So, how many of you have heard of Feed the Cats? Can't stand this guy. I'm going on record. Well, he's wrong. This is one of his tenets. Keep distance coaches away from sprinters. Like, cross country coaches are hardworking. They're involved. You're here for a reason, because you want to get better, because you want to help kids. And for Tony Holler to actually say this and to disparage cross country coaches, I think is very short sighted. I think it's more reflective of where he is. I work. One of my close friends is a sprints coach in London. Internationally, and nationally, there are a lot of people that are not big on Tony Holler. So I just wanted to thank you, coaches, for what you do and all your hard work, and poke a little fun at Tony. So I've been a sports performance engineer for over 30 years. I've been coaching at different levels on different sports. But I do want to talk about Speed 101 because as a sports performance engineer, I own my own business. I get a lot of phone calls from coaches, college level coaches. They want me to assess their athletes, different programs. They want me to do speed development, plyometric development, or whatever. It's always good for me. So Speed 101, this presentation that I put together, was basically in response to a lot of the questions that I keep getting over and over and over again. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put together a 17-minute video, and here you go. After that, if you want to talk more, awesome. So there are 10 basic tenets that I talk about, but specific to cross country, middle, long distance, these are some of the big ones. So, oh, by the way, I'm a PhD level student. I'm at the dissertation phase, which is the big reason why I'm here. So, in fact, my comprehensive exam was examining. Well, I examined middle and long distance training, and then put together a program for it. So that was just to get to the dissertation level. But Haugen's one of my favorite researchers, and I agree with this. Sprint training and development is not based on or guided by sports science. Now, I will say, I feel like in my conversations with coaches, there is a lot of science that you're pulling in. So but I think we could sports science and coaching could be better aligned. How about that? There's a lack of evidence-based research identifying best practices for speed development. That I agree with a lot. So my biggest pet peeve is when I get clients who, oh, by the way, I have a state champ right now. A former state champ is one of my clients. She's a cross-country former state champ is one of my clients. I'm not going to disclose her name out of respect. And tomorrow I will be working with another cross-country athlete. However, everybody's heard this. Run at 70% of your max. Well, what is your max? How do you know? And how do the coach or the athlete knows? CJ gets a kid in the weight room and says, hey, lift 70% of your max. We know. But from a speed standpoint, do we really know? I'm not sure. So there is a gap between what we've experienced as athletes and coaches and what science says. And this is the biggest one. So this was a study done in, 2019. See, these are all the priorities. This was a study. So they interviewed all these coaches, and they interviewed biomechanists, so basically sports scientists, and said, hey, what's your top 5? What's your top 5 for developmental athletes? What's your top 5 for your elite athletes? And so they picked, right? And any information that you want or need, I'm happy to give to Dom, or we'll get it to you. So coaches, when they talk about developing athletes, they're talking about strength training, posture, footwork, skill-specific conditioning, and arms. For elite, they talk about max velo, maximum velocity, speed. which is interesting. So hopefully I'm not going too quick. If it's okay with everybody, I'm gonna pause at different points. And if there are questions that you might want to ask right away, I'm happy to address those. So the sport mechanists, their top priority was max velo for developmental and for elite athletes. Speed matters. So they talk about strength training, depending on, for the developmental side, strength training, and then arm positioning. It's one of the last ones. Posture, power, the biomechanics of that, very important. I agree. So here, when we talk about speed, we really need to be clear on what we're talking about. So from 0 to 10 meters, that's acceleration phase. So if you're training from, one of my pet peeves is I work with a lot of football athletes and they're speed training, and they're only training for about 10 yards or 10 meters. They're not speed training. They're acceleration training, which is a part of speed, but they want that breakaway speed, but they're training the wrong thing. It's like trying to learn to swim, in a kitchen. It's just not going to work very well. So maximum velocity, and this is where the money gets made. It's from 30 meters to 80 meters. By the way, my dissertation is kind of centered around this. Every sport except for one has a gold standard metric for maximum sprint speed. The only sport that doesn't have it is ours, cross country and track. We do not, every season you might have the kids run a mile, or you might have your way of assessing kids, but there's not an apples to apples means of comparing speed and athletes. So, but I'm going to be really specific about max velo. Max velo only happens in a 10-meter window. I've got data to show you in a moment. So you could have them run 150 meters. You can have them run 10 miles. There's only going to be a 10-meter window where someone's running their fastest. That's it. If you're elite, it shows up later. If you're starting out, it shows up earlier. My rugby clients, they're hitting max velo at 20 meters, but the demand is different. Now, velocity maintenance, that's, staying in the same zip code speed-wise, or we call it velocity loss as well. That's a totally different conversation. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but would love to have a conversation with people if that's something you're interested in. So maximal sprint speed, there's the total time, and then there's maximum velocity. Again, for me, it's from 40 to 60 meters. And total distance time, there's been tons of studies about splits. I prefer 10-meter splits because it just works really well on a lot of different levels. And that's what we use. All right, speed reserve. So if Dom and I were in the weight room and we decided to have a challenge, right? And we're gonna see who can lift 250 pounds the most number of times. So Dom's max is 500 pounds, right? That's his max, and mine's 300. I think this is pretty accurate, right? We all know who's gonna win. Dom, it's not gonna even be close. Dom all day. Because 250 is close to my max, but it's half of his. So the faster you are, the more efficient you are. And so from a competitive standpoint, it allows you to do more things. And from a training standpoint, you can do more things. But if you really don't know how fast someone is, how can you train it, right? So as Mr. Crick says, the faster the athlete, the less effort needs to be expended to maintain maximum velocity, which is true. So that's a big one. Okay, so here's my top 10. I'm only going to hit 3. And I kind of touched on it. Maximum velocity exists in a 10-meter window. Sprinting takes place between 30 to 60 meters. So if you're training shorter than that, we can talk about longer than that. But really, it's 30 to 60 meters. Here's another one. If an athlete is not sprinting at least 95% of their maximum velocity, you're doing something. If you're below that, you're doing something, but you're not speed training. So I can talk to you about the neuromuscular response to exercise. We can talk to you about rate coding. So basically, when you run faster, your muscles respond. They're like, hey, we've got to move a lot faster. And so there's a cognitive and a muscular response to that. So when you run fast, you get faster. It's kind of like when you lift more, you get stronger. Well, I mean, it's almost like programming. So anyway, let's talk about this for a second. Usain Bolt, okay, sprinter, right? So if you look at the data at, I want to say 60 meters, he hits 0.81. I have clients, our fastest clients have a max velo of 0.95. And they're, and this is even faster. Yeah, he's rolling, right? But if you look at the data, he never hit, he only hits it there. And then he stays in that area, but he never hits it again. So this is what, and there's a whole group of individuals that all they do is break down sprints into 10-meter splits. That's all they do. And then they just, they show it. So again, if you look at where he's fastest, it's between 30 and 60 meters, right? So Haugen again, my favorite. If you really want your athletes to be fast, they need to be sprinting at or above 95% of their maximum velocity. And I'll get into how you can measure that. Okay. Actually, I'm going to pause here real quick. Does anyone have questions? No? Cool. All right. So this part is all about distance running and middle distance running. So the speed reserve ratio, that's your maximal sprint speed, and you divide it by your maximal aerobic speed. And this is a real thing. Anaerobic speed reserve, I just looked up a study. Tennis coaches are looking for anaerobic speed reserve. So it's really key. So based on the studies that I put this presentation together, maximum aerobic speed is basically a mile, right? Now, we were talking about splits. Splits are critical. Thomas Breitbach is someone that I've collaborated with a lot, and we had a conversation about splits, how to use splits with longer distances. So, obviously for 1600, just quarters, right? Now, maximal sprinting speed. So for me, this is important. It's a 40-meter sprint, but we're only going to time the last 10 meters because it's outside of that acceleration window and it's at the front end of the sprinting window, the speed window. And the reason why we do that is the majority of my clients. So I have 2 other clients. The Mays girls are from Tulsa East. They're over at DePaul now. I've worked with them as well, but they're more elite, so they're going to hit max velo a little, further down distance-wise. But most high school athletes, they're going to be fast between 30 and 40 meters. So, it's a good starting point. And when you have 50 kids, do you really want to be parsing through a ton of splits when you need to have a good, solid understanding of where they are? So we use a 10-meter fly with a 30-meter fly start. So speed reserve ratio, again, you're taking your anaerobic speed and you're dividing it by your aerobic speed. There's been a lot of studies, and so there's been a very aerobically focused bias when it comes to training. So, but if you look at the numbers, 800, it's 70% aerobic, 30% anaerobic. So if you're not really working on the speed side of it, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Even up to the marathon, it's 25% anaerobic speed driven, and that margin may be the difference between someone making it to a podium or not making the bus to state. Never know. So Sanford came up with this brilliant idea of getting the speed reserve ratio and breaking athletes out into different subcategories, which is good for you because if you want to differentiate the training for an athlete during the season or the off season, you kind of know what they need to work on. So there are four categories: 400, 800, 800 specialist, 800, 1500 specialist, and then 1500 in marathon. Now, there hasn't been a lot of research on this, so that's the reason why the speed reserve ratio for the mile to the marathon isn't there. Okay, anaerobic speed reserve. You just take your anaerobic speed, subtract your aerobic speed. Pretty simple. You can use any distance you want for the aerobic part. Again, I would encourage you to use distance, time, and splits. And then, again, it's pretty much straightforward. Just come up with a system that you want to use and be consistent with it. I love 10-meter splits just because it makes a lot of sense for me. This study was really key for me because there really is not a true gold standard for measuring anaerobic speed and track and field and cross country. This was the first study that actually said, okay, we're going to use 50 meters, which is great. The key thing I would like for you to consider is that every athlete's different. Two athletes can run the same time, but they could get there differently. So one might be faster, one may have a better aerobic capacity, and that's okay. You might want to train them differently. So this is huge, and I kind of mentioned it before. Your sprinting speed dictates your training and performance, okay? So to the point where it can influence your high intensity training tolerance. So Coach Spencer actually uses max velo. He kind of knows who's in shape and who's not at the beginning of the season. So, this past August, I ran a clinic. We got max velo times, and he kind of knew, where everybody was speed-wise, which is also reflective of their conditioning. In soccer, they actually have a repeat sprint test that referees and the soccer athletes have, and there are standards that you have to meet. And if you don't meet them, then you're not in shape for that position. Rugby too. So Bachero Mina did a great study too. They weren't worried about the aerobic performance. They were like, okay, how does jumping and strength and sprinting influence middle and long distance athletes. So they did 2 20-meter sprints, which I love personally. I would have preferred that they would have thrown a 40 or 50 in there, but who am I? 200-meter sprint, again, equal number of splits. And so the goal, as you can read, was really just seeing how does sprinting, jumping ability, and strength impact performance. All right. So there have been numerous studies that have looked at the aerobic contributions, and I just put that in there. Over time, it's changed. So, marathon in 2001, the research said that it didn't have any, there was very little to no anaerobic contribution. 2005, it changed. And, okay, so creating a speed profile allows you to coach the athletes better throughout the season. It also helps them understand where they are and the work that they need to put in to get to where they want to be. So it also lets you know if what you're doing is working or not. So I thought this was important because, a lot of the conversations that Dom and I have had or I've had with other coaches is energy systems, energy systems. Well, an athlete's ability to adapt and manage lactates and, higher, lactate determines performance, right? I mean, it's pretty simple. The faster you are, theoretically, the better you are at managing that lactate. Now, I'm not saying that Usain Bolt could run 5K and do well, but if Usain Bolt could repeatedly sprint at a certain level, he could. So this data is from one of our cross-country speed schools from last summer. The max velo was the data I collected. The race PRs was their season best. So there was only one outlier, A15. They ran in the 18s, and their max velo was very slow. But everybody else, and actually I think it's pretty interesting, 1.14 for a max velo for a cross-country athlete that probably has not done a lot of speed training, it's pretty good. So there is a correlation between maximum velocity and cross-country performance. Yes. So this is what I did. Just show it up. I've got a free lap timing system. I've got about 30, 40 chips. Just line them up, shoot them through, collect the data, and we kind of look. So yes. So we just took that 10-meter split. Thank you for the question. And then collected it, and that was their best time. I think with that group we captured 3 sprint efforts, but that was their best time. When I get deep in the weeds, I like averages better than their maximum performance because someone can just throw up a really great number. And then, so with our speed school, there's 2 types of kids. There's the kids that run really fast one time, and then the next 2 times they're slower. And then there are these kids that are they run a fast time, and there might be a slight variance, but they're all in the same zip code, as I would say. So, yep. Both. Yep. Oh, there's some. Hold that thought. There's some fast women. We've had clients that are faster than the boys, and which is awesome. But what I did is I did break out. Actually, this is Fort Atkinson data. I think I can say that. So Spencer broke out some of this too. So we're actually applying the research here where we had their max velos, Coach had I think their summer times, and then we just did the math, and we got our speed reserve ratio. And if anyone else has questions, just yell out. No need to raise hands. So Thomas Breitbach totally changed my focus over a decade ago. So I work out of the Pettit a lot of the time, and I knew Thomas from my Muskego days, and unfortunately I feel bad. I caught him at the end of a workout, and I'm like, "Hey, can I just get some data from you?" He was game. Um, he didn't know what he was getting into. So on tired legs, he ran a 1.19. And around that time, he ran a 419 mile. So his speed reserve ratio was a 1.36, which I thought really said something. So he's fast. I mean, he's moving pretty rapidly, and it still positively impacted his race performance, which makes sense. So Ben Stricker, another Fort Atkinson kid. So the first year, he had a 1.20 max velo, which isn't slow. It's not slow. But the next year, he dropped his max velo to 1.09, and he qualified for. So the first year, 1.20 did not qualify for any events at state. Second year, qualified for 3. And if you want to tell me that max velo, doesn't make a difference, okay, you're going to make my job easier for me. So this is important, and I feel like there are a lot of athletes that this is more track related. There was one program where a coach timed all the athletes at the beginning of the season. Coach needed someone to run an event. Assistant coach who knew all the data said, "Hey, you should put this kid in. This is like week 7 of the season, and this kid had never been given an opportunity." It was a 200 in the event. Ran the best time of the season. Coach's jaw dropped. It's like, well, the data told. If you looked at the data, it would have told you right off the bat. But I would say we're data driven. I think coaches should be data informed. That's just my personal opinion. So number 4, this is our company's top performance list. Number 4 is Lily Strong. She's at Minnesota Mankato and flying. There aren't a Jetta Mays, or no, Maya Mays is she's an 800, 400 athlete. But most of these athletes are sprinters. However, I'm gonna say this: there's a young man. Where is he? Number 6, Aiden Grosskopf. He was a sprinter, qualified for state in the 100. They needed him as the anchor for the 4x4 at Lodi this past June, and he anchored it 2 days in a row. So his max velocity, his capacity allowed him to go up in range and perform at a high level. So that's basically, I should say this. So Nat is my buddy from the UK. He and I put together kind of like the scale. This is what we use to assess athletes. So if you're over 1.30, you're developing. The further you go up, the faster you are. And I know it's frustrating for some client families because they think their kid's fast, and then the data comes out, and then so I joke with my partner, who's an ultra athlete. I give everybody here a ton of credit. She runs, 50Ks all the time, and I'm like, I'll just clap for you. Um, whatever you need, hon. But I think it's, unfortunately, it's a tough part of my job to say, hey, you're not as fast as you think you are, but we can get you there. I mean, Lily Strong started out as 1.31, and I mean, she got a lot faster and got a scholarship. Um, so Nat, he's more of a sprints guy, very knowledgeable. Um, so he actually created a table for the 100-meter dash based on max velo. Or the other way, if you want to run this, if you want to run a certain time, this should be your max velo. Um, I I think in the next 5 years there will be more predictive information for cross country and track for the middle and long distances based on speed reserve ratio and maybe max velo, but more so speed reserve ratio. So the rest is just key terms. I mean, that's basically all I got. Again, I'm grateful for your time, and hopefully my presentation will have sparked a little bit of thought about how you work on speed development.
So I know we talked, and you see this, and I know some of my speed developments like line 30, line 40, wicket drills. So I do a lot of wicket drills. I already speed development, and the football field. 20 yards, 20 yards. Like what can you offer to the coaches that want to just introduce basic speed training? How many days a week? I know you said 10 meters. I know you used the free lap. You bought it for free lap.
Yep. Brilliant question. Thank you. So a couple things. At one point in my life, I used wickets. I don't think wickets hurt kids. My issue is as a sports performance engineer, I have 60 minutes, and if I'm going to spend 10 minutes setting up hurdles, no thanks. Nat actually was a huge help. So we do wall marches, wall switches, which to me makes a lot more sense because it's tailored to the athlete. The thing with wickets is, if CG and I are both running through wickets, my stride length is longer than his. Not by much. Not by much. But um, that's important. And the biggest thing is that you're any intervention that you do, you're training behavior. So an unnatural, you know, I guess there are people that go past parallel when they're sprinting, and that's poor mechanics. You don't want to do that. It is more important to me. So we do stair runs a ton because that's the best thing to do. But if you don't have access to stairs, wall marches, wall switches are awesome. Yeah, sure can. So basically, your arms are parallel to the wall, and then I can make it work. I'm on it. Yeah, I could do that one. Okay. I didn't know you were putting me to work, Coach. Thanks. So I'm here. So let me talk about a couple key things. Um, when you're sprint mechanics, one, you want to sprint on your toe to midfoot. Your heel should never hit when you're sprinting. Okay. So we talk about knee up, toe up, heel out. And you want to hit 6 to 8 inches ahead of your body. So, if you're too far out, you can't generate force. If you're short, you can't, if you have a short stride, you can't generate force. So I talk about baby bear just right, 6 to 8 inches ahead of the body. Okay. So with that said, I'm right here, and I'm just going to pick up, and you just want to go parallel and back down. And one thing, kids kick out, and we don't want to do that. So sometimes I'll put a hurdle in front to kind of give them a target. Um, and then the wall switches. It's just like a wall march, but it's just quick. Boom, boom. And I think that's great. We can do boom switches. So you're here. I wasn't going to talk about arms, but I guess I'm going to talk about arms real quick. That is like my one pet peeve. You know what? Arms are important, but they're not as important as everybody thinks. I have so many kids that run like this because, coaches say 90-90. There's this guy that's a Paralympian that's probably faster than most record holders at the high school level, and he doesn't have arms. So if arms are that doggone important, how's he running so fast? Okay. So what I always say is whatever leg's up, this arm's back. And so it's here, you switch, that's a boom switch. And then boom, boom switch is just like that. So we work on these things, and it takes about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And our kids are rolling. I mean, and the one thing I want to say about Max Velo, all my kids know their numbers. They know if they PR'd before we do. They look at they sprint, we tell them their time, or they see their time on the iPad, and they know. They know their numbers. They know other people's numbers. Hey, you know what? Dom PR'd. That's awesome. And it makes sense to them. So that's another thing. I mean, it's motivating for them. Yes.
So definitely not an expert by any means, but how much time would you recommend per week athletes spending at Maximal at above 95?
Great question, and thanks for pulling back in. So you only get a specific window to perform well. You know what I mean? So you kind of build up. So this is kind of nuanced. Maximal sprinting is like maximal lifting. I personally feel like in a cross country season, Tuesday is the latest that you should ever do it. Coach, one of the best things that I saw in your presentation is that you need 48 hours after a hard workout. Science would agree with you. Research would agree with you 200%. So with that said, do it on a Monday or Tuesday. That's all you need. My head coach is Mark Guthrie. He won a couple championships in track and actually cross country too. But he told me a long time ago 2 things: don't mess up good athletes, and you only need to sprint twice a week. That's it. I personally think, to your point, if you're sprinting at 95% of max velo, you only need to train once. It's just better. So with that said, as far as like with Fort and the programming that we did, it was, I want to say, I'd have to look at it, a maximum of 5 sprint efforts, maximum. And so if I can, okay, so A2, A3, A6, A8, those kids, they're fast, they're probably in shape, so their speed reserve is better. I would say they could get 5 reps of a max velo workout. A12, 3 max. The central nervous system needs time to recover. So there are some things that I really didn't talk about, and I apologize because I didn't want to waste your time. We're talking about we talked about the intensity, 95% of your top end speed, right? Didn't talk about recovery between sprint efforts. Did not talk about recovery between sets. So I can tell you, it varies with the clients. Football, it's really short. It's like 30 seconds. Soccer, same. Rugby, same. Um, I'm a jerk. My clients. So you should. So it's base. The rule is it's something like a minute for every 10 meters that you sprint. Okay. Um, so the kids are supposed to only they should get about 10 minutes recovery between sprint efforts, but we do 5, somewhere in there, sometimes 6. It all depends. Um, but the one thing that Spencer and I agree on, if a kid drops below 95% max velo, if their performance drops, they're done. It's a waste of time. So, coach, the goal might be 5, but you got to earn it. You know what I mean? So I know Spencer tells kids, hey, they might want to run that extra one. It's like, you got to earn it, because we got to keep you safe and we got to keep it quality. So um, I actually would say it's kind of funny. So 20 to 30 meters is kind of this weird zone. I call it pre-max V. It's really beneficial. So you could, for kids that have a slower max velo, you could have them run 20s, capture the back end, so you kind of know, and when that time starts to drop, I mean, final point with all this, you get a check. So maybe you get a max velo at the beginning of the season, so you get an inventory of all your athletes, you get a speed profile built up, you've got, maybe, is it a magic mile, right? When you guys run as fast as you can or something like that? Maybe not. Okay. Um, but so you get the anaerobic, aerobic metrics, and then, obviously they compete. I would say once every 4 weeks, maybe do 1 or 2 max velos, especially if they're slower. Don't hit them with 5, but recheck, see where they are. If the kid dropped from 1.81 down to 1.40, well, okay, hey, you're ready for another rep. So does that help?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else? What, plyos or stairs? Oh, you know what? So for us, I attack sprint mechanics in a lot of different ways. So we've got the wall march, wall switches, boom switch, boom switches, and then we just do 5 stair sprints primarily. Um, I think that's more than enough. So just real quick, if I kind of went through like an hour of training, what our program looks like. So we start with stairs. Well, actually, so we work in the stair area. Boom switch, boom switches, stair sprints. We come back, wall march, wall switch. The kids get 8 minutes to warm up on their own. They do their own thing, accountability. And then we do starts. Something else that I think is really important for y'all, but I wasn't going to talk about it, is their starts. I feel like there's a scrum at the beginning of every race. Whoever gets out first, you don't have to deal with the gridlock that happens at the beginning of races. So what happens is, I don't know, Nat and I have talked about this a lot. There's a foot slip. So everybody has an asymmetry in this room. One leg's stronger than the other. Some kids their start leg is actually weaker than their speed leg, and so their foot slips, and so they don't get the benefit of a good start. Not to even mention, I don't know how many strides are there in a 5K. How many steps? Come on, TikTok. Just kidding. Right, but so this is my point. Let's say they're 2,000, right? 2,000 steps, and I don't know what it is. If one leg's stronger than the other, if this, which is my stronger leg, if this is 100% and this one's at 70%, every time I step with my weaker leg, I'm giving up 30% in efficiency. We won't go too deep with that, but it is a thing. I can measure it. I can also fix it, which is a different conversation. So that's really important. So we incorporate plyometrics in our training too. So once the kids do their warm up, we do starts, and then we basically do our sprints. We pull it all together, and we go home. So.
So you said five stairs?
Yep.
One flight of stairs, walk down, recover for.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. So, yep, they sprint up together. The Pettit Center is really nice. You got about 5 lanes. So so what I like to do is sometimes I let the kids pick who they want to sprint against up the stairs, and sometimes I'm picking. And they sprint up, and then they walk down because I believe in quality. I think you're not getting the full benefit if you sprint up and sprint down. You're just wearing them out, quality over quantity. So yeah, they sprint up, walk down, and that's about it. And the stairs force you to get into that knee up, toe up, heel out position. So you're not tucking it. If you tuck, you're gonna feel it right away. And that physical feedback part is huge. The other thing is, and that we've experienced, when a kid runs a fast sprint, they know what that feels like. You know what I mean? So that's important too. So 5 minutes? Oh, okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Two things.
Yeah.
Do you ever utilize like downhill? And what about a lot of people pulling sleds?
You just gave me about 3 more gray hairs. Coach is spot on. She was talking about Instagram, and it's a great thing because I'm inspired by a lot of different coaches and people. However, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Here's my thing. There are athletes that you could have them pull 10 sleds and they're going to be fast. And they're going to be kids who pulling sleds is not going to help them. My philosophy is fast is fast. If you're not running fast, you're not running fast. So it's kind of like with soccer, jogging 2 miles to warm up or whatever to get ready for a sport where you've got to be fast repeatedly. It doesn't make sense. So we don't, at one point in my career, I had the parachutes and the sleds, and I thought it was cool. And then I started really looking at the data. I'm like, I think I give some to Dom, the parachutes. Sorry, Dom. What? By a teacher. He could use it. So I think hills, running down or up. So I don't know. Me personally, I have access to kids once a week. I have kids that drive as far as Madison or Chicago sometimes to train with me. So I've got 60 minutes. Real quick, Pareto principle, the 20% that does the 80%, that's me. I want to give kids that 20% that's going to give them that maximal benefit. And it's funny, there are so many studies on sled pulls to make athletes faster. There's not been one that I recall, and I've looked through a bunch, that is demonstrated that it makes you faster. Acceleration phase, maybe, but maximal V, max V, no. I think running hills is good for cross country because you run hills. You know, Bill Belichick said, if you're going to fight in the Balkans, you got to train in the Balkans. So if you're going to run hills in cross country, you run hills. Again, I just want to thank you for your time, your questions, and your interest. Travel safely, and if I can ever be of help, let me know. They didn't boo me.
What's that?
They didn't boo me. Yikes. How do I?
Thank you. So I hope
Was it good?
we'll
I hope it.
debrief here soon. What
Yeah.
you think, and
Hey.
also, so we'll connect. And so
I hope it was good.
it was good.
Okay.
So,
Helpful.
it was good, and like I said, it's supposed to be an eye opener for the coaches to just think outside the box. So, guys.